Hey, greetings everyone. This is a short video hoping to give you guys an idea about how to do some basic things in charcoal that you can refer back to over and over. I want to start off, I'll try to make this quick, but I'm going to start off by showing you the tools. So you recognize this stuff, the paper towel crumpled up. I've already been using it here, so I've got a little bit of dirty spots and I've got some clean spots too. Make sure you have this around, good stuff. I've got my maul stick. This is the tray that I'm using to keep my supplies in. Most of the drawing that I've been doing so far is just using the hard stick. I've also got the medium and the soft here. To be honest, I haven't pulled the soft out at all. I'm mostly using the hard. I have used the medium a little bit. I've got this dark charcoal stick here, which I'll use maybe for another project, and then a little piece of vine charcoal that I use in the beginning for framing out the drawing. Then other tools, kneaded rubber eraser, very important. I've got this eraser that you recognize, a little fine mono zero that you recognize. This is the Faber-Castell sharpenable eraser. I've got a sharpener right here on my desk. That's kind of handy. I've got another stubby. I've also got this wonderful little tool. It's kind of a stiff nylon bristle 3/4 inch brush. Anything like this will work. Probably ought to add this to our toolkit in the future because I've really been enjoying using it for smoothing and kind of grading. I'll show you a little bit later. This brush, a makeup brush. You can pay more for a special art one, but it's essentially the same thing. Make sure that you don't use one that's already been used for makeup because that's a little bit greasy and, well, you know what'll happen. Then I've got my blending stick, my favorite one. I found it with a little piece of tape around it. Anyway, and I keep them in this butcher tray over here, which is a decent thing with the sides. A plastic tray would probably work better because when I drop stuff back into it, it's loud. Whatever. Keep that over here. Okay, what are we going to start with today? First, how to add value. Obviously, adding value, you can add it with, when in the very beginning, when you're drawing with your vine charcoal. You can add value with the edge of the stick. Look how dark that gets. And you can add value with your pencils. When I'm adding with a pencil, I try to change the direction a little bit. Now let's get something clear straight away. Using the pencil is largely just getting material on the page. Any of these, it's just getting material on the page. You've got to put something down. But charcoal is a push and pull type of medium. You're putting it down, and then what are you doing? You're manipulating it. You're pushing it around, you're adding a little bit more value, smudge it, add more, changing directions. It helps to eliminate the idea of the buildup of strokes. And I tend to blend, when I put down strokes like this, I tend to smudge it by working against the grain of the stroke. Now, another thing that we can do here for adding value is refer to our super special tool. I mean, you see, that just looks like charcoal pencil strokes, and that's kind of okay. Your paper towel, here's the dirty part, here's the clean part. If you use the dirty part, then gently, you can really make this look foggy. Work it into the surface. Sorry for my squeaky chair. Add more on top. Notice I'm using the side of the pencil, not like that, because that's going to make a really crisp mark. I'm just adding some value here. Pushing it in. Makes a beautiful soft tone on the page. If you put some value down and you smudge it with the clean part of the paper, it's going to lift a lot of that value back out again. So now I'll use the clean part right here. It's removed a lot of the material. So remember, using the dark or using the clean or the dirty part of the towel can really make a big difference. Towel is a drawing method too. If you want to put down some beautiful soft tones, maybe you can barely see that, but it is putting down a really gentle, soft tone right there. Another thing you can do is have another page set aside with a little bit of charcoal like this over here. Or sometimes I use the shavings. That's beautiful, deep dark. It kind of builds up on the paper like that. Use that to add gentle value, soft value. It not only puts it on the page, but it smudges it around and makes it look beautiful right from the start. Okay, so that's putting it down, adding value on there, and as we start to manipulate edges in a moment, you'll see more and more how the values are built up. The pressure that you use, less pressure is usually better. The pressure that you use controls the quality of the marks going on the page. Changing the direction of the strokes. Sometimes I work with my left hand. Smooth it like that. Okay, so that's putting it down on the page. And we'll do a bit more of that as we get into manipulating edges. The next thing you've got are erasers. Pretty easy to understand. Erasers, little skinny line, kind of all-purpose erasing, good stuff. These are fantastic. These are a bit gritty. There's an abrasive in here, so if you really need to get in and clean an area, use this one. Also handy because it's got a cleaner brush right there. You want to make sure that you get the rubber bits away from the area that you're working on, because if you try to work over those rubber bits, you could grind one of them into the page, and then it's going to create a problem. So this big brush just really cleans up everything beautifully. Get all that dust out of the way. Okay, what's next? You know how to erase things, right? That's easy. Next, we want to talk about actually manipulating this stuff to create edges. So there are two types of edges typically. You've got a really crisp or a hard edge, and then you've got softer edge, which are gradations of value from light to dark. Oftentimes these exist really close to each other, and so it works nicely if you at least start one direction, typically further away from you, and move closer. That way you don't have to work on top of things that you've already made pretty, unless you want to use the maul stick, which is pretty tidy for getting into an area and making marks without touching the surface. Even later on when you're adding detail marks, the maul stick is beautiful. So let's talk about edges. What I'm going to do first is create a hard, crisp edge. So I'm going to get in here with some material. I'm going to do it right here just to show you that even once there's value on the page, we can still push it around significantly. You really, really don't ever want the white of the page showing through unless you've erased back to the white of the page to expose it, which kind of makes the fibers a little bit gritty. Just the raw white of the page showing through without ever having been touched. It looks like, well, white paper. So anyway, we'll get in there. And now I'm going to create a hard edge right here where it's already dark. I'll put down some material. Once again, I'm using the hard charcoal pencil, which so far in the drawing that I'm doing for you guys, I haven't really needed more than that. Maybe at the end I'll get in there. Change the direction of the strokes. There's going to be some build up in certain areas, and this doesn't have to be really meticulous, because this is just getting some stuff on the page. Just getting material on the page. You don't even have to smooth it out that much, because what are you going to do? Well, I like to come in with my left thumb, push it around, and notice I'm being semi-careful, but I'm not being fanatical about this edge right here, because I'm just starting this process. This isn't like one and done sort of thing. You put down some material, clean off the extra stuff. Now you've got some material down. Maybe I want to sort of get it stabilized a little bit. Put a little bit more material down. Try to get the values a little bit more stable from one area to the next. Okay, I can do it again with my thumb. I can do it with the paper. I've got a nice dark spot right there. I fold it like this to get an edge. And then I can get that edge right down there, the dirty bits. Just a couple of passes. Notice that largely took it away, but that's okay. It's pretty nice and beautiful. I can add value more later. What I want to do now is I want to adjust, and I want to set up exactly where that edge is. It doesn't really matter which eraser you use. I'll use all three just to kind of give you an idea. Get back in there now, and you go back and you clear out, you excavate up to the edge. This is going to happen over and over and over. So here's the Faxis BM2. If you need to get really into tight spaces with your mono, and then you can kind of feather it away from there if you need be. Get right in tight and then feather it away. See, I'm creating little rubber shavings as well. And now with this guy, which is a great cleaner, it's going to actually produce a little bit of grit on the page. But it gets right in there and cleans the edge like nobody's business. It's one of my favorite erasers. Now, what do you do with this? You got this junk right here. You've got a couple of options. You've got an eraser or a brush on the end here. You can hit it with that. Nice big one swift stroke. Every time you touch it with a brush, though, it's going to alter the material a little bit, and it's actually going to push a little bit of value back into that area that you just cleaned off, ever so slightly. So you save the final cleaning, the very end. This is not it, by the way. I can still, if I really get in there, I can still lift it pretty close to back to the value of the page. At the end, what works if you need a super clean edge is, well, compressed air. That cleans it up pretty nicely. Or real soft pressure. Okay, so we've created a pretty sharp edge right there, but let's say I need to add more value. Okay, I'm gonna get back in there. I need to add more value right up along the edge, and then I want to grade it away. I want it to get lighter as I move away. So this is a process that might take many, many times working into it. It's not just one time and you're done. Also get a bit obsessive with all of this. Learn to vary the pressure that you use with your hands and your tools to smudge. Your fingers really are one of the best tools. Now, I have to get in there pretty tight in order to, to get the charcoal to look nice right up against the edge. And invariably what happens is that you end up going back and dirtying that edge again. Don't stress. This is going to happen over and over and over. You work this area up to where you want it, and you just keep cleaning the edge so that you can see it, or if you are daring, you can just let it build up. But at the end of the day, you can always get back in there. And charcoal dust will fly away as you're working on other parts of the picture. Charcoal dust will fly and it'll land down and it'll get into areas that you thought were really beautiful and nice and clean, and suddenly it's like, hey, that looks a little bit of dirty. And well, you're gonna have to get in there and clean it again. You can get right back in there. And clean it up again. Beauty. Okay, now this gradation right here from dark to light is still a little bit rough at the edges. I can clean that up if I want, and that's about now adding gentle, just looking for areas that are a little bit lighter and getting it even all the way on the gradation from dark to light. Kind of create a half moon or something here, a crescent shape. Add a little bit more, smudge it. Notice the strokes go this way, the smudging goes against the grain. That helps to defeat the idea of the strokes of the pencil. And notice how I'm working, crafting. It's more like sculpting, both hands simultaneously. Sometimes I work in circular motions, whatever it takes, whatever you think or you discover is going to produce the effect that you want. That's looking pretty good. This is largely how you'll spend time in the negative space areas. If you need to add a little bit more type value in there. Once the page is saturated with material, it takes the charcoal better. So hopefully just sort of watching me work here will give you an idea. Now if I want to, I can, there's that vine charcoal. If I want to, I can make a gradation from here out to there that fades right back to the white of the paper. First decide where that white of the paper is going to be. And so let's say that it's going to be, right about here. I'll only do it on one half here. So I'll clean the area that is going to be white to white. And now I want to make a soft gradation from here back into the darker. What I'll probably do first is start with this brush, just because I want to soften all of this. And I want to push some material out here because I need it to be a little bit darker. It's dark here, it's getting lighter, and then all of a sudden it gets really light. So I need that gradation to be a little bit smoother. So I'll work it with the brush a little bit, and then I'm gonna look for areas where I need to add a little bit more. Notice I'm working with little short strokes, ultra light pressure. Blend as you go so that you can see. Looking for areas that are lighter. Taking it right out to the edge. It's not a perfect process. Okay, so this gradation is looking pretty good. I would probably just like keep going endlessly because, well, that's the way I am. But now I've smudged out beyond where I wanted it to be white. So I'm going to clean this to white again. I've got a beautiful gradation happening here, but now this is too dark. So I have to smooth it back. So first of all, I'm going to hit it with this brush because I like it, but you know, your finger is good enough. And now I need to take away gently a little bit of material there. So what I'm going to do is basically draw with light. I like this guy because it's really not the strongest eraser. The little teeny Mono Zero, it's pretty tight and it will take away material. And the other one, the Faber-Castell, this will really take away material. Light pressure, you can use it, it's pretty sensitive. But this one is kind of your workhorse. So now out here where I want the white of the paper showing through, I'm just going to kind of reestablish that again. I'm using pretty light pressure. I'm going to periodically sweep it with this so that I clean off all the little rubber bits. And now I want to soften this edge right here because it looks a little bit hard. I want it to go more gradually into there. So basically working diagonally with super light pressure, I'm softening this edge. Soften, soften, diagonally. I'm basically like drawing with a little bit of light. Now at this point, maybe the brush again is good because that's going to smooth it. And I look for areas where I need to take away a little material. I don't even know if the camera can pick this up, if it's sensitive enough to pick this up. So I'm basically just crafting this edge, trying to get the gradation to disappear into the white of the paper. I personally like this method because I think that it adds a little bit of texture, and that texture helps surfaces to look more real. I am using just like the lightest pressure, basically holding it here so loose and just letting the weight of the eraser itself, you know, of the pencil-y eraser, put pressure on the page. At a certain point, because this is a light gradation, I don't want to get in there and hit it with this because that's too dark. It's also the fibers are breaking down there. So I want to use a relatively clean area. So I'll use this area right here. I fold it into an edge so that I can control it, and then gently, light pressure, circular motions. I'm getting in there and now back and forth, and I'm smoothing that transition and going a little bit deeper to try to smooth it across the whole of the transition there. Now see, I've probably pulled out a little bit too much there. It's the nature of the beast. What do? Fix it. Just get in there and fix it. I really like this guy for stuff like this. The areas that I need to fix more. If you see something that needs to be fixed, do it. All right, that's a pretty nice gradation there from dark into light. Maybe I need to have it a little bit darker right about there. Pretty easy to do. Add a little bit more material where you need it and just lightly touch it and push it in, varying the directions of the strokes. Delicate. So you see, paying attention, you can control the medium to get it to do what you want. But it doesn't happen immediately, but you can achieve a wonderful range of effects just by continuing to work the surface. And you can go on and on and on, you know. I need to quit there because, well, that's enough for right now. Notice that in the process of doing this, I didn't touch this area at all, but dust flies around and it lands back in here in the clean area that you want really nice. So I need to go back and clean again. And sometimes you're going to get into a situation where you're working here to do something and your hand is right over this part. You see how I have a little bit of charcoal here? It's from dragging it across another part. I don't want to screw up stuff that I've made pretty over here. So maul stick, some kind of a stick like this, the soft tip is really nice, or a bridge that you can use. Go back again. Oops, went a little too far there. Sometimes that happens. And I can largely get in there and clean that edge. This isn't the best drawing paper. I'm using a pretty cheap pad right here. This paper that I'm using is inferior to what you guys are using, your drawing pads. Now, I kind of messed up my edge a little teeny bit, so I want to go back in. I mean, if you're really fanatical about it being super pretty. Kind of get soft right here. So I'm trying to just drop a little bit in. Kind of tough with this little stubby pencil too. Gentle. Gentle. Probably means I need to go back in and clean it again. Sometimes it can take a lot. Just depends on how crazy you want to get with the whole thing. You know, you guys know already I'm crazy. Okay, so there's a hard edge. Beautiful. Let's say now you saw how I softened an edge right here, but let's say that I want to make some gradations through here and just kind of manipulate and control the values in this part. There's a variety of ways that you can do it, and one is by using the brushes just to try to like equalize and soften the different mark making around the edges. And so I think what I'll do is I'm going to use this guy right here. I'm going to create a gradation from the light into the dark that's more curved, more like you would encounter when you're dealing with drapery. And I mean, some of the edges are really sharp like this. There's a couple of places where the charcoal's kind of got pushed into the page pretty heavily. And I can take it away pretty much, but not perfectly, especially on this paper. And what I want to do is gradually build up some values inside of this area right here, but have soft gradations all the way to it. It's really the same as this over there. So I'm going to, from this part right here, add value into the center, and then feather it out. Push it in. Change direction, soft pressure. Add more value. Resist the temptation just to push a whole ton right in there. Blend it in from the edges. It's going to be like this most of the time, feathering it in there. Adding more value. Feathering it out. See how nice and smoky that is? And if I really want to get serious, maybe go here to the medium. I can get pretty dark here in the center. Already you can see the difference between what the medium puts down and what the hard puts down. This charcoal is a little bit blacker. The medium is gray, a little bit more like graphite. Put the material down, blend it out with your finger or with your tools. Sometimes working against the grain of an edge is a good way to get the material down without grinding it into the paper right on that edge. Feathering it out. Okay, so that's a pretty nice gradation there from light into the dark. I'd probably go back again and soften the edges a little bit. Yeah, it depends on what you need. And that's how you create light folding, light and shadow folding across, let's say, drapery. As the convoluted undulations of the drapery ebb and flow, light is hitting different places. Sometimes you have a crisp edge like this, where maybe it's the edge of a cast shadow, or maybe this white right here is the edge of a piece of drapery, and then you're seeing the negative space behind it. A lot of times, though, really smooth gradations of value from light to dark, and you produce that here by a combination of putting material down, smudging it with your fingers, manipulating it with this, using brush to soften, to clean, various erasers. You just have to practice with it. You have to see what works, what produces the edge that you need, the surface that you need, and be prepared to know that it's not just going to be like, oh, I got to get this drapery fold done. So chicka 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 ch, oh, that looks good. No. You've just done, 1/50th the work that you need to do to get it to look right. So hopefully this manipulating it here has given you an idea of how it all goes, but all of the effects that you see right here, all the way from crisp dark edge gradation towards light. Here's a really beautiful light edge that can be graded back into dark, darker, darker, darker. You can manipulate your tools, and you've learned it all right here. You can manipulate your tools to produce whatever you need. And then it becomes a question of just looking carefully. The more you see in your subject material, the more theoretically you can drag onto your page and capture in your drawing. If you're willing to spend the time, you can get it done. I hope this has helped, and I hope that your drawings will be stunning. I'm sure that they will. Get cracking, be safe. Talk to you later.